Hi, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be doing something a little different today because we have, you may have noticed, a very special guest, my dear brother-in-law, Rabbi Mendy Paltiel, all the way from Mequon, Wisconsin. Just as an introduction, my wife and children have been visiting Mequon, where my in-laws live, and much of Craney's family, for the last, 7, 8 summers. And because of circumstances, she wasn't able to go there, so we bought a piece of Mequon here, and I figured with such an esteemed brother-in-law and guest who's here with his mishpacha, his family, to spend the week, I needed to cash in on this opportunity to discuss some very pressing issues in life that I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say about. So first of all, welcome to Southern California.
Thank you very much. It's a real treat to come here. It's been a wonderful, wonderful visit. We're here almost a week. And first of all, the accommodations could not be better. 5-star hotel accommodations, the food, everything's excellent. The company, not too bad. Really, really beautiful. Enjoying my brother-in-law, Rabbi Mendy, and my sister Craney. It's been a real treat to come here, and more so, my children are really enjoying the chance to hang out with their cousins. And I tell you, it's a beautiful state, and we had a chance to meet a number of people during the last, I could say, 5-6 days. What a beautiful community. What a wonderful community. I can't imagine how beautiful it is when everyone's actually together in the same shul, in the same program, in classes. But for now, I am very thankful to be here, and I'm thankful to be able to join with a pre-Shabbos little chat, especially where I come from in Wisconsin. Shabbos is starting now. I got myself 2 bonus hours of Friday. It's really good.
Well, with a response like that, I may really consider inviting him again. So, Rabbi Mendy,
yes,
tell us a little bit about Chabad in Mequon, Wisconsin. First of all, where is Mequon on the map?
So for non-Americans, I usually say it's next to Chicago. For those from America, or for that matter, California, we say that it's near Milwaukee. We're about 15, 20 minutes north of Milwaukee. We're not a suburb of Milwaukee. We're our own county, our own place. But it's a little city north of Milwaukee. Beautiful. And in a way, like Laguna Niguel, but nowhere near as beautiful. I got to tell you, this is beautiful. I'm loving it. My children say, why can't we live here? And I don't want to go there now. It's another subject. But really, really wonderful community. But what makes Mequon special, truth to be told, is we have such a wonderful collection of people, families, single people, children, adults, seniors, and each person helps make the community what it is. It's, yes, my father who founded this community almost 40 years ago is a very big part of it. But that is not possible without the incredible personalities, individuals that make this community in Mequon special, and I am certain that that's something we have right here as well.
Wonderful. We're living in this corona age for so long already. Who would have predicted to be faced with such a situation? I mean, it's really turned the whole world and the norm upside down. And some of the things that we've discussed in our community and others have discussed with me, that not only have they found a silver lining during this challenging time, but in fact, they've grown in ways that they can never have imagined. Just as a few examples, in life we have things that we would put under the category of urgent. Urgent means I have a deadline I need to reach. I have a very important meeting. I have to pay a bill that's overdue. Then we have things that are important. We all know they're important. The problem is, oftentimes we never get to them because we're too preoccupied with the urgent matters. What is very important? Spending time with one's spouse, spending time with our children and really getting to know them, getting to know and cultivate their strengths, assisting them with their weaknesses, and getting to know them in ways that would never be possible to know from the inside had we been on the regular treadmill of life without this corona disruption. And this individual shared with me, he says, for the first time in my life, I'm given an opportunity to actually spend time on the important things and put aside the urgent things because frankly, many of the urgent things I'm not able to do at this present time. Another example is somebody told me, I'm beginning to realize that cliche or that line that people use, which is very true, how charity starts at home. You ever notice when a stranger walks, knocks on the door, and you may have been in a bad mood or may have been a little aggressive with your loved ones, and you open the door and you say, "Hi, how are you? What can I do for you?" And if the person is there for some charitable cause, we're readily available to help them. And yet, to the people that are near and dear to us, we seem to have a little bit less patience. And this individual said, "I'm learning during this Corona period to actually like the people we love."
Oh, wow.
So my question to you is, what are and continue to be some of the takeaways that you've gleaned from this period in the last several months in ways that you've grown personally and you've observed in people, members of your community?
Yeah, so before I answer the question that you were talking before about spending time with family, I was talking to somebody during the third week of Corona, and I was talking about having this time to spend with family, etc. That it was unprecedented to get up in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and families around. He said, Rabbi, there was a guy sitting on the Titanic, and he's about to have a cup of soda, and he asked the bartender for some ice, and boom, they hit the iceberg. He says, "I wanted ice, but not that much." A guy says, tells me, "I like time with my family, but not that much." But that's of course a joke. We love time with our family, and that's been one of the gifts, to be able to, whether with our spouses, that we're not running out in the morning. Sometimes while the kids are still sleeping, you could sit and have a coffee, you could talk, and actually talk about nothing of significance. Usually a husband and wife these days are so busy, the only time you talk is when there's something that needs to be discussed. The gift now is you could talk when there's nothing to discuss, just to talk like two good friends, two close people. But to answer the bigger question really is what touched us in Mequon. So I want to bring you back to the second or third week of Corona. And I was walking that night, taking a walk Friday night. We didn't go to shul. There was no shul going on. Now we have a shul in the tent, occasionally. But there was no shul going on. And I'm walking myself, and I passed by our building on a Friday night, and the lights are off. And I'm thinking to myself, how sad. We have this beautiful building. We're on a regular Friday night, the sounds of singing, the Friday night services, the kids running in the hallway, the energy, the feeling, the light, the spirituality, the warmth, the life that's going on. And now it's not there. And it's not just here. It's thousands and thousands of shuls around the world that are closed and dark. Or maybe the lights are on timers and they're on, but still it's empty. And as I'm walking, I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe God is telling us, for the last number of years, you've been coming to visit me in my place. I want to come visit you in your place. And God says, you know what? Instead of having the spiritual center of life to be a building where everyone gathers, I want you to make your home into a center of Jewish life. I want your home to be a center where Jewish life is vibrant. And think about it. I have seen more posts about challah baking on a Friday in the last 4 months than I've seen in my lifetime. I never knew there was so many flavors and designs of challah. It's incredible, the amount of people sharing about this story and that story in their home. Our homes have become centers of Jewish activity, centers of Jewish life. So while it's true that the shuls have become a little bit of a sadder, thing to come and observe the emptiness of the shul, the homes have never been so vibrant. And if you think about it, that's what Judaism is all about. Of course we have to have a shul, but the ultimate place of serving God was not meant to be the shul. Our home, whether it's a kosher home, whether it's a home that has a mezuzah, a home where the Jewish books are there, a home where kosher is being kept, a home where the Moda'ani is said in the morning and Shema said at night. This is the gift, or the silver lining, or the opportunity that we tried to cash on in Wisconsin and Mequon. And that night I came home, I told my wife, I have a plan. I want to do this. We made a campaign which went on from then until Shavuot, so it was about 5 weeks. It's called Every Home a Sanctuary. And we found mitzvahs that are centered in the home. As I mentioned, kosher, mezuzah, prayers. We had packages delivered, hand-delivered, to 200 homes in our community. We couldn't give it to everybody, so we got it to the people we thought were easier to access and the ones that were more accessible. And we gave out every Friday 200 packages that had instructions and some details and some tools to make your home into a center for Jewish life. So that to me was one of the tremendous opportunities that were created. And somebody told me, I was speaking to a guy from our community about a month ago. He says, you know what? It was almost worth it to discover this side of my Jewish observance. I never thought of it this way. He says, I always saw Jewish life as in the shul. That's where I wear a kippah. That's where I pray. That's where I'm Jewish, so to speak. I never saw it as my home as being the center. He said it was almost worth it. Of course, it's not worth it because in the sense of we can't put a price on the discomfort and the illnesses and the death that went on. But the benefit is something to take advantage of. So that's a thought.
Amazing. I mean, another silver lining is right here. You know what it ordinarily cost me to bring in a scholar in residence like him? I mean, with these answers, to pick his brain. I'm doing under the guise of, we're here for Shabbos anyway, and things are done virtually. Over here, we have the unique opportunity during a period like this to do it in person, which is a breath of fresh air. But another silver lining. Rabbi Moshe, we talked a lot in our community about the fact that it's important to be proactive. Many people are struggling. They're struggling financially. Many people are lonely. People are stuck in their homes. People haven't seen their family for a very long time. And we talked a lot about the fact that you have to be proactive with healthy activity. It's difficult to do volunteer work because, all of the restrictions, but to fill one's heart and mind with Torah and Torah values. That really speaks to the core and the essence of who we are as Jews and really the purpose for why we exist in the first place. This is another opportunity during this period to reflect upon my relationship with God. Why did God create me? What does He want from me? What does He need from me at this present moment? And just asking those questions gives us a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging. And, Torah, everybody finds areas in Torah that really speak to them. And I'm wondering if you could share with me or share with our audience, whoever's out there, of some of the Torah that you've introduced in Mekwan, some of the classes, some of the courses, because to tell you the truth, our experience here has been more people are studying Torah than ever before. People that said, I would never attend a Torah class. Maybe, I don't know, the drive from the home to the Chabad house was that painful. But when we brought Torah to their living room, somehow they find it within themselves to get on a Zoom call or Facebook Live, which is a tremendous thing. It's hard to know why God does the things that He does and why this is happening. And nobody knows the answers, but it's incredible to think of the fact that, at the age of modern technology and social media, where it's being used in such a positive and vast way that nobody could ever have imagined. So speak to us a little bit about the activities that are happening in your neck of the woods as it relates to the spreading of Torah and Chassidus.
It's very interesting that you raise this question. We had a very, I guess you call divine providence, a very extraordinary sequence of reality that hit us in Mekwan. Because just a few weeks before Corona hit, we had opened up and hired a new couple, a very dynamic couple, and a rabbi to advance and create a whole new level of adult education programs. Rabbi Dov Lisker, Rabbi Dubi, came to town, and we're going to increase classes and have more lectures and more courses, and we had this giant plan. And then, boom. The boom represents, just for the record, Corona. And then Corona shows up. You can't have classes. Lectures don't begin. And there was such a frustration. Like, why? But then, as he said, the silver lining, what happened, the reality of the opportunity of technology to use both Zoom and Facebook and other forms of communication, that there was never that many people attending classes. At first, we thought, one second, yes, it's true, we're having a few more. For an example, the women's Tanya class, or the Friday or the Thursday night Chumash class, or the Talmud class on Monday night. So you have, instead of 5, 10 people, maybe 12 or 15 people coming. So which is nice, and some people coming who couldn't come usually because it's so far away. But then we discovered the classes are remaining online. And while we're talking here now, as many people who are watching right now, we've discovered that there are hundreds of repeats of the video being watched, whether in part or entirely by people. That means the little class that we have, it might be a 15 or 20-minute class, it might be watched 200, 300, or 400 times on Facebook, on YouTube. So the amount of people benefiting from the classes, and that is increased, and that motivates us to keep going with the classes. You might say, I prepared this class, and I had 9 people, 12 people, 16 people. But if you look, there are hundreds of people benefiting and being inspired, even if they don't stay for the entire program. They listen to a message, and no question about it, they're inspired to engage and to look further into their own Jewish identity, into the study of Torah, and that's what it's all about. So that's as far as the program of Torah study. But as you were talking before, you reminded me, you were talking about people being home and doing something, being engaging. One of the things that really inspired me in the last couple months is the amount of private citizens, individuals, not hired rabbis, not staff people who do this because this is what we dedicated our lives to and this is what we're doing, but people who have other responsibilities and are making a point every day to call up someone who might be lonely, to deliver food packages to people who don't have, or go shopping for them. I am astounded, both teenagers, college age, and older people in their 50s, 60s. They're young, but they're older than the college kids, of course. And these individuals, one particular set of 2 women, 2 friends in our community, have been going every Friday. They took the entire community, is what seems to me, I don't know exactly, and they must have divided it up into like 20 sections. And every Friday, they deliver to 5, 6, 7, 8 families some flowers and a little gift. And they're doing it. I asked them once, why are you doing it? What's going on? They said, this is our way of bringing more warmth and love to others. And I'm thinking, you could sit at home and be frustrated, or you could go to someone's house and drop off flowers. It is incredible, the amount of people. And it goes on much more than we see it. And this is the greatest way to deal with the challenge of loneliness and being down, is by acting with kindness and generosity and sensitivity to others. When someone else is in need, and you can bring a smile to them, when someone's living at home alone, and you can pick up the shopping for them, especially if they're elderly and can't go out or are afraid of the risk of going out, this is the greatest way to take the event, which is meant to make someone naturally feel lower and more closed up, and to open you up and to open them up and to bring true warmth and true engagement of one member of the community to another. So that really inspired me tremendously.
Just a short station identification break. L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim.
This is a Farbrengen, so we got to say l'chaim.
I'll do mine later. I got one coming.
What kind of host am I? I didn't even prepare l'chaim for him. And we're not going to share this cup now.
Right.
I would like to share a story that happened in our Chabad that really taught me a tremendous amount about this idea that we're discussing, the importance of staying productive, particularly reaching out to others with love, to be of assistance to others in any which way, which is something that the Rebbe really taught us the value of, because really, when we give, we are receiving more than what the intended recipient is getting. Briefly, there was a young woman in our community, very troubled, who began to abuse drugs and some terrible, terrible activity without going through into the details. And the parents called me, could you speak to her? And I said, of course. Whatever I would say to her, she had some rebuttal or something nasty to say, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I decided to try another tactic, based on the Rebbe's teachings, to give the individual areas in which they could excel and areas in which they could contribute positively to society and to others. So I asked the parents, could you bring her on Sunday morning when we're starting our Hebrew school? She was a little bit older than the Hebrew school age children. And they walked in, and she came in with her regular, face where she had written all over her forehead, don't talk to me about anything, there's no changing my mind. And I said to her, do you have any talents that God has granted you with? And she said, talents, I know how to draw. I said, really? That's so interesting, because Maura Craney, who runs our Hebrew school, needs a chart to be drawn with all the names of our Hebrew school children to create the Aleph Champ chart, and that's how we could kind of keep tabs on where the children are holding on the various levels. I think there are 10 levels. Could you put down each of the Hebrew school children's names with your beautiful handwriting, and could you make up a beautiful chart? All of a sudden, her face lit up. and she got to work immediately. And I signaled to the parents to go back home, come back in 2 hours. And they looked at me like, are you crazy? 2 hours? This young girl cannot sit straight for 5 minutes. And we're afraid that she's going to escape and run away and harm herself as she was accustomed to do. P.S. The parents came back 2 hours later, and this young teenager was deeply involved with the project. She lifted her eyes and saw her parents at the door and said, please come back in an hour. I'm not done yet. I still have more to do. And she was so alive at that moment and so into this work that the parents looked at me. They called me out and they said, what did you tell her? I said, I didn't tell her anything. I gave her something productive and useful to do that lended itself to her natural born talents. And for the first time, perhaps in her life, she wasn't existing so heavy. She wasn't thinking about herself, but she was alive. Definition, she was doing something for others, something that could benefit another human being. And this is something also that is highlighted during a time like this. Reach out to somebody else. We could do this virtually, whether it's a phone call for somebody who needs a little uplifting, a little word of inspiration, because helping is not only carrying packages, which I know there are restrictions to all of those activities, but also verbally, a word is very, very powerful, both ways. And certainly we could impact somebody's lives. I believe we could change somebody's life for better. Moshe, I'd like to, I know Shabbat is coming, and it's a miracle if we will finish this before Shabbat. You got two rabbis here who like to share their thoughts, but the idea of hashgacha pratis, divine providence, is a very tough subject. How every detail in our lives is divinely orchestrated and ordained. It's particularly difficult for somebody to relate to and to accept when one is going through adversity, challenge, when one is going through a moment of grief. And we recently heard, it was actually your cousin Ari share his incredible,
powerful story,
heroic story. And if you haven't caught it, we of course recorded it, of how he not only survived the ordeal of 9/11, and he was caught on, I think, the 78th floor when that tower hit, and he made it out alive, and how he saved one of his coworkers. And the story, I mean, it's undeniable, the hand of Hashem, the hand of God in every detail of that story, because it kept on happening. As he said, he should have been gone many times over that day, and God wanted him to live and protected him. We talk about the idea of how a tiny virus that cannot be seen to the naked eye, you need to put it under, you have a special glass, a microscope in order to see it. I mean, the fact that it brought 7.6 billion people to our knees throughout the world, clearly Hashem is orchestrating this for reasons that are beyond our understanding. But if you could speak to this idea of hashgacha pratis, of divine providence, in a way that will make it something real and tangible for the people that are watching, so that whatever struggles we individually may be faced with, we could start viewing our lives through the lenses of divine providence.
So this subject is one of the most beautiful subjects that we can talk about. And he mentioned we're rabbis, so we can sit and talk for hours here. We love it. All you got to do is give us some kugel, some strudel, maybe some cake, and we're ready to sit. But the story I want to, or the message I think is in this short time that we do have to share, there are many aspects of hashgacha pratis, divine providence or divine guidance. And some of them is how it's so particular, and even the tiniest events God is orchestrating. But there's an aspect that I want to sort of flip around and talk from a different perspective that's helped me, and I think has helped many people in this perception, in this concept. And that is, what does it mean when we think about that God is guiding or orchestrating things? It gives us a reassurance. Things didn't go out of control. There's still someone running the program, and there's a plan. In other words, it allows you to have trust and a comfortable faith in the person or the being that is in charge and guiding it. So I'll tell you an interesting story that I read a little while ago, and it really helped me understand this concept personally. And that is about this young executive, 40-year-old man sitting on an airplane. He's a whole big guy in his own world. And he's sitting on the airplane. He ends up sitting in one of the rows right next to this cute little girl, like 4 years old or 5 years old. And she's sitting coloring a picture the whole time. She's preoccupied with her little project. And he's watching her, how comfortable she is, and she's sitting there. Suddenly the pilot announces that, I just want to give you all a heads up. Please put on your seatbelts. We're going to go through some very significant turbulence, and it's nothing to be afraid of, but it's going to be significant, so put your seatbelts on. True to his word, a few moments later, the plane started rattling and shaking. This executive, his hands are wet with sweat. He's sitting there gripping the armrests, and he's literally nervous and concerned for his own well-being. And he looks, and the little girl's sitting with her tongue sticking out, and she's working on her picture, oblivious to the whole crisis going on. So after the turbulence was done, and the pilot came on and said, "Now you can safely remove your, get up to go to the bathroom, whatever." He turns to the girl, this executive, and says, "Weren't you afraid during the turbulence?" She says, "Of course not." He says, "Why not?" He says, "Because the pilot said everything's gonna be okay, and the pilot's my dad." In other words, if you know that the one who's running the program has your best interest in mind, cares about you, and tells you it's going to be okay, all it requires of us to have some faith in it. So one way to see divine providence is not to try and figure out, so why did this happen? So why did that happen? I don't know. But I know one thing. God knows. He has a plan, and I'm not going to get myself all worked up. Yes, I'm human. Sometimes I will get a little bit anxious, and sometimes I let my feelings get ahead of myself. But if I make an effort, whether it's missing a flight or being stuck at home with Corona or having a job change that you didn't want to have occur, if we know there's a God who loves us deeply and cares about us, and He's organizing things, we go from going like, why, to, I wonder what's going to happen next. That should be interesting. Now, of course, that's a very optimistic perspective to have such an easygoing nature. But if we do develop and work on ourselves every day for a few minutes, think about this concept, it makes the idea of divine providence easy to relate to, or easier, and it actually will bring that feeling that the little girl had, an absolute calmness. Imagine if you can reach that during the day when everything is going berserk, the bell's ringing, and you're late, then you got to pay a bill, and you have this issue, and and you're as calm because you know that the pilot said it's going to be okay.
Amazing, amazing. Now Shabbat is approaching, so I'm going to share a final thought, and perhaps you could get the last word.
No, listen, I couldn't take the last word.
One of the things that's been highlighted during this period is Judaism calls upon us to live from inside out as opposed from the outside in. When we're living literally inside, we don't have the ambiance, if you will, of the shul and all of the people and the camaraderie and the social aspects. We're forced to look inward. We talked about this before Pesach. People spent the Seder, and it was very painful, alone for the first time ever. And I talked about the fact that a Jew is never alone. I told a couple of stories about the Rebbe illustrating this point, and how we had the opportunity to really connect to the real essence of what the holiday of freedom represents. But what's this concept that Judaism requires us to live from inside out versus the way the secular world tells us to live, from outside in? Outside in would mean, let me see how people around me are living, and I guess I'll have to emulate and live up to those expectations. And if not, I'm not a happy person. I'm not a whole. I'm not complete. I'm not, so to speak, keeping up with the Joneses down the street. The problem with that is, I could walk into the office one day, and because my self-worth and feeling of my value is determined on what others say or think of me, if somebody at a board meeting says, "Hey, Rabbi Paltiel, what a great point." All of a sudden I'm feeling great about myself. What happens the next day if I say something and they look at me, what a strange suggestion is that? What, do you want to put us in bankruptcy? All of a sudden I'm crushed. My entire self-value and self-worth has gone down the tubes. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we're forbidden to live from the outside in, to ask the world how are we supposed to live, or to view our colleagues and neighbors and say, oh, I guess, John there looks very happy because he has a 3-car garage. I guess That is mandated for me in order to achieve happiness and fulfillment. Judaism says, instead, live from the inside out. Know thyself. Know your own intrinsic value. Know that you have been validated by God Almighty Himself. And that's really the only validation that you need. And when I live that way, I recognize that the fact that I exist at this present time, in this geographic location with these individuals that I'm surrounded by, starting with my family. Charity starts at home. I learn how to treat them properly. As we said before, I learn to like the people I love. Then when I venture out into the vast world, I'm standing firmly with my 2 feet on the floor. I don't need to be validated by anybody else. I don't have to look for my happiness based on somebody's compliment or critique of me, because I know that God needs me to be at this present moment, and I've been validated by Him. How do I know? Because I exist. If I believe that God breathes into me every fraction of every moment life, that means He needs me to be here to accomplish a task. That's the greatest validation. What more do I need? And ladies and gentlemen, that is really the beginning of achieving happiness and fulfillment and a sense of self-worth. That is, we talk about self-esteem, the ultimate self-esteem. So I would like to ask my brother-in-law to close today's Farbrengen, and I tell you, I enjoyed it so much. I think I'm going to ask him to return. Maybe not. If you're back in Mekwan, we'll do it through
if you come to Mekwan next week, we can do it from Mekwan. Live from Mekwan.
Maybe we could do that. But close it off before we usher in the holy days of Shabbat.
What you said is absolutely. With your last point you made actually sums it all up. And it fits into divine providence, and it fits into the story you mentioned about the young girl going through a crisis. When someone recognizes God needs you, you're needed. It's not about what I want and my rights and I have the right for. I am needed. What made that girl so positive and uplifted? She was not about, like you said, she was needed. And a situation comes up. If you're needed and you're recognized, I'm here for a purpose. God put me here at this moment, at this time, for a purpose. That is when we actually truly are shining. Our existence comes into fullness and completeness when we come to those moments when we can actually declare and know I am needed. God has a mission for me, and I'm going to do it. I'll rise to the challenge. I will not, shirk. I'm in. So,
on that note, Rabbi Moshe, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, you found this meaningful and uplifting and inspiring for those that listen to us live, and I'm sure many others that will watch subsequent to this. I'm going to post it on Facebook, of course. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom. Women and girls, do not forget to light your Shabbat candles today. And we look forward to seeing you very soon in good health. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, and enjoy the fresh baked challah.
Amen.